135 years ago, a minister in Chicago gave a talk. And I feel like I have a kinship with him this morning because I doubt he had any PowerPoint slides behind him in the year 1890. This minister gave what has been referred to subsequently as the $1 Million Sermon. And it's referred to that because, so in his church in Chicago, he had, as part of their church, they had a group that would help people in the church to get vocational skills, to build them up so that they go out in the world and work. And this was the beginning of the sort of industrial age. And in Chicago, this was known as, a big meat packing area. So a lot of opportunity, but the people weren't really trained for it. So this minister, whose name was Frank Gunsalas, he had this idea. He said, if we could train people to do these jobs, we would be a benefit to the community, because he saw it working in his church on this very small scale, but he knew there was potential for it to be much bigger. So he wanted to create a trade school, that's what we would think of it now, for practical science and practical art. So this was his vision, his dream of what he wanted to do. The only challenge was, as he envisioned it, it was going to be something that would be really expensive to create. So he has his vision, and he decides that he's going to share his vision with his community, with his congregation. And he writes a talk. He knows exactly what he's going to say, and he puts an ad in the newspaper. And the newspaper ad talks about his talk title. Much like you guys come here because you see that on our Friday email it says, here's the title of whatever Dr. James is going to talk about, or the ministers. So his talk title was simply this: what I would do if I had $1 million. That's what he shared with people. And he wanted to commit himself to that vision, because he knew he was going to get up and say, this is my vision for what our church, our community, what we can do if we follow this. Now, we can hear now about $1 million and say, oh, that seems like a lot. In 1890, $1 million would be the equivalent today of $35 million. So imagine, a minister getting up and saying, what I would do if I had $35 million. It was a big commitment. But people who've talked to him subsequently have gotten from him that he didn't doubt at all that it would happen. He had faith that it would happen, and he had specificity. So the two ingredients of his vision were faith and specificity. He was clear about what he wanted, what his vision was, and he said, this is what I'm going to make happen. So the morning of his talk, he gets to the church, he's ready to go, and I'm now seeing this. Interesting. He didn't have his notes. He left his notes at home. He didn't have his PowerPoint. He left his notes at home, and yet he went out there and gave the talk, what I would do if I had $1 million. And he outlined his vision for what he wanted, what it would look like, what it would cost, and everything, and what the actual outcome would be. Well, the talk ends, and someone comes up to him afterwards and introduces himself, and he says, you may not know me, I'm in your congregation. I come every now and then. But this man worked in Chicago. His name was Philip D. Armour. If you've seen the meat Armour, he was big then. And he said, I would like to give you that $1 million because I believe in your vision. He did, and within 4 years, he had already moved out of his ministerial role and into being the head of what was then the Armour Institute of Technology, later merged with some other ones, and now it is Illinois Institute of Technology. And I really wish you could see this, but this is what it looks like today. That's the campus in the south side of Chicago of what started with a simple vision that he had, an audacious vision of what was possible. And so as I sit here and think about that today, I go, could I give a sermon like that and a talk as we would think of it and believe that it would work? I mean, think about that. This guy went out there and was going to give a talk saying, here's what I would do if I had $35 million. And so this whole idea of belief is something that I find fascinating, because it's kind of, any spiritual faith, that is at the heart of what we talk about, what we teach, what we aspire to understand in a better way. In Science of Mind, the textbook, Ernest Holmes uses the word belief or believe 84 times. I'm always fascinated by this because, if you see that in the Science of Mind textbook, it's something that he's also curious about and it's important to him. So he says, and this is, I was realizing yesterday when I was working this, I want to do a class sometime where you go through and you excerpt every instance where Ernest Holmes uses all caps quotes, because he does that sometimes, and he's doing it because I think he's like, this is something you should really get. So here's something that he said. We are bound by nothing except belief. There's nothing that bounds you other than what you believe is possible. And certainly Frank Gunselos, there wasn't anything that bound him except what he believed was possible. And I imagine I would love that. It should be a show where you take someone from time 135 years ago and you bring them to the campus and say, that talk you gave in 1890, this is what happened. I have to imagine that if you had the ability to see something that was just a vision, that you would find that amazing. So this takes me to this idea of, okay, so there's, I don't want to say perfect belief, but there's belief in the perfected state of, I know it, I believe it. So it got me thinking, could you ever get to a point where, let's say you come to a Sunday talk, or you take a class, or you watch one of our videos online, could you watch that, see that, be there, and then go, I got it, I'm done. I completely believe it, I know it, I don't need any more. I'm not suggesting that, but that's what I want to talk about, that idea of, can we get to a place where we believe it? Holmes said, and this is interesting because I had this conversation with Dr. Tiffany yesterday. I called her and I was saying, obviously you're teaching practitioner class. Can you think of a place in the Science of Mind textbook or any Holmes reading where he said something to the effect of, you could get to a place where you just know it all, not know it all, but you have a grounded understanding and you're like, I'm there. What we talked about is maybe it's Troward is the closest of saying Christ consciousness, that level of understanding something so completely. And I think we were both like, no, there's not really anything that we can think of. However, what he does talk about a lot is treatment. And treatment is perhaps the closest thing that we have to the idea of, could you get to a place where you could treat for something and then just know it's done and not have to treat anymore? And this is what Holmes says in the How to Use It section of Science of Mind textbook. He says, one should treat any given proposition until he proves his principle, no matter how long it takes. So if you're doing treatment, the implication there is you treat until you get the results you're looking for. So in theory, this implies that you could get to that point where you go, okay, I get it. I'm done. I'm good. Except there's life that comes along. So the title of my talk this morning is My Last Talk Ever? ? No, but this is why this idea occurred to me, and thinking about, could you get to that place where you go, that's my last class ever, because I'm done, I'm perfect, I'm complete. I don't need to give another talk. I don't need, if I'm watching a video, I don't need to do that ever again, because I know I remember so completely who I am that I would never need to be here again, or I never need to read another book. I'll share with you what my feelings are on that, but the question then becomes, well, if that was so, what gets in the way of that? What stands in the way of that perfect belief? Well, this is the part where I would show you something, but I'm not going to show you, I'm going to describe it to you. And it's funny because yesterday I was thinking about this and I had the clip all together and I thought, I wonder if YouTube is going to have a problem eventually with this video having this clip in it because it's from a movie. And you know, if this was my last talk ever, I would of course have to talk about what movie? Superman, of course. It's like that's my Broadway. There's a scene in the movie I would have shown you, but now I'm realizing, no, you know what? This is me getting to act it out for you. And I was sort of anticipating that I would do that anyway. There's a scene in the movie where, early on in the picture, where before he's been Superman to anyone, nobody knows this, Lois Lane is supposed to be in a helicopter, supposed to fly to do some assignment, and the helicopter has an accident and is dangling from the side of the building, and she's hanging from the helicopter. And in that moment, Clark Kent walks out of the building ground level and looks down and sees the hat that he knows is hers, and he looks up and he sees it's her. This is the iconic moment that everybody knows where he goes and rips the shirt off, and this is the first time in the movie that he becomes Superman. And he flies up as she's falling at, 120 miles an hour terminal velocity, and he catches her midair. And the first thing that he says to her is, "Easy, miss, I've got you." And then she says back to him, "You've got me, who's got you?" Now, the scene ends, he just sort of smirks and says, that's funny. The scene ends with a reporter down on the ground, and what she says, she's looking up and she says, "I can't believe it. I just can't believe it." So what she's seen is something that, you could call it a miracle, you could call it the universe doing the most amazing trick ever, and yet people are like, "I don't believe it." And so my other favorite thing, and I just have to share this, if you saw the movie, it probably never occurred to you, great irony, which I love as an aficionado of the movie, is that after he does the shirt thing and before he takes off to get Lois, he's walking across the street, and the first person to talk to Superman is a 1970s era pimp who says, "Say, Jim, bad costume." Little fun thing for me. Apparently nobody else. But I go back to that moment when he says that to her and she responds. And the way that I think about this from a metaphysical standpoint is that there's her, Lois, and I see her as a version of us, the person who is not sure how this is happening, and then Superman is the universe. So if you think about her in the relative form, and then there's the quantum field, the consciousness, love, the universe, and so what he says to her, "Easy, miss, I've got you." Imagine if this is the universe saying that to you. "I got you." This is so clear to me, the fact that there's no slides this morning. I feel like this is the universe saying to me, "I've got you." Whenever you have something that happens in your life, what if you imagined that there was like a Superman character that said, "Relax, I've got you"? Now, of course, she says what we all would say, "You've got me, who's got you?" She's just given this amazing blessing, this amazing miracle, and what does she do? She immediately questions it. She doubts that it could be true. And so, in that moment, we can think of that Superman, that character, represents faith and belief, and what she expresses, not who she is, but what she expresses is that doubt and uncertainty. So, she does what we all do, which is that she questions this thing and ironically questions the thing that just proved itself to her. Now, in case that wasn't enough, and this is I love this part, and I think about the universe this way as well. The universe is like, "Oh, that's nothing." Because what happens next in the moment is he's got her, she's safe, and then the helicopter falls off the side of the building and is falling down to them at 150 miles an hour. And by the way, if you think about the physics of this, terminal velocity of something like a helicopter would be 200 miles an hour. He's flying up, and yet never in that moment do physics come into it, because you just know that this is the way the universe works. He catches the helicopter, and there's a scene in the movie when you see him actually pick up the helicopter, put it and her on the roof. So I go back to Science of Mind and the originator, perhaps, of the way that we think, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He said, "There is no great and no small to the soul that maketh all." Woman, helicopter, makes no difference. Both the same. And if there's something in your life where you go, oh, that would be really big, a book that you think, I want to publish the book. I can't tell you how many times in the last year I've thought about publishing the book, and I go, that's too big. That would be a challenge. And what Emerson reminds us is, no, there's no big, no small. It's just, it is a small book, but it doesn't matter. It's whatever you want, whatever you believe you're equal to, you can make that. So the distinction between big and small is something that we create. We create that. We say, oh, this is too big for me. This is too much of a challenge for me. And Holmes reminds us that it's our belief. He says, our belief sets the limit to our demonstration of a principle which of itself is without limit. So again, he's reminding us, it's our belief. It is simply what you believe that dictates what's possible. I go back to the movie, and it's so funny, like when you start to see all these things that come up. In the movie, if you were around then, even you've probably seen the poster a million times, there's a poster that sold the movie. And in the poster, it says, you'll believe a man can fly. The reason that was important was before this movie had been done, and it's easy for us to overlook this now when, CGI and all this can basically do anything. They did not know how to do this. I've read stories about the making of the movie where they went into it not even knowing if they could capture on film something that an audience would believe. They had the script, they got Marlon Brando, they have Gene Hackman, they've got this amazing cast of people, everything's ready to go, amazing technicians, but they didn't even know if it was possible. They never said what we would probably say today, which might be practical, to say, you know what, maybe we should film this once and see if it actually works before we commit to spending $100 million on a movie. They didn't. They just said, we'll figure it out. And they put this room of people together. They all took whatever skill they had. And it's funny because in the reading of it, they all started off in different departments. And what they found was the departments went away and they all just started working together as a team. So they weren't individuals, but they were a team looking to put this together. So they realized that the story wouldn't work if you didn't believe a man could fly. As I think about that, and I think about it for my own life, I realize that your life doesn't work if you don't believe. If you don't think that something's possible for you, if you think it's beyond you, if you think it's too big, if it's a helicopter and you're like, I don't know if I can do that, then yeah, that's, as Holmes tells us, that sets the limit for what's possible for you. So I get this, and I go, okay, but how do we get there? And I go back to what Craig shared with us this morning, the idea of where am I blessed? I love the idea in Winnie the Pooh, he has his happy place. So this made me think, is there like a believing place? A place where you could get to and go, you know what? I know that when I'm in that place, to borrow what Craig said, this is the place where I am blessed. Years ago, I did a TEDx talk, and I've talked about this a little bit, but one of the things that was interesting to me in that experience was I remember being in the back of the room as they were introducing me, and I'd given this talk a couple hundred times, over 200 times. And I thought, I should be ready for this. And yet, in the back of the room, ready to go on, I was terrified. And all of that emotion started coming up to me. And it didn't matter that there were 100 it could have been 100 people, 1,000 people. In that respect, no big, no small. I was still terrified. And I remember looking at that spot and thinking, you know what? What if, as Craig said, what if that's the place where I am blessed? What if my talk, and we know this in the quantum sense, there's no past, no future, it's all one. What if my talk already exists in that one place, and all I have to do is go walk down to it and be in the space of that talk? That's the place where my talk exists, where it lives, where I am blessed. So it worked. At least it got me to take the steps to go down there to the stage. So I come back to where we are today. You know, if you know anyone who has an electric car, you and I both have electric cars. So one of the things you know is, just like I guess with a gas car, you have to charge it up, right? So say once a week, you have to either at home or go somewhere, you have to charge it up. Like a filling station. Now, if you think about this for us, what if we think of this place as our charging station? What if this is the place that you come to once a week? What if this is the broadcast that you watch once a week that reminds you who you are, that charges you up for that experience? I'm going to close with the current Superman movie and an observation about place and the question of whether there's a believing place. In that movie, and in fact, all of Superman, there's something, it's his home, his place that he goes back to. It's called the Fortress of Solitude. And it's the place that he can go back to. In fact, in this movie, at the very beginning of the movie, he has, not really a spoiler because you'll see this in the first 30 seconds if you haven't seen the movie, he has lost a fight for the first time. So he goes back to his Fortress of Solitude to be restored. And there's a scene where essentially he is restored by the power of the sun, by light. You see the metaphor here. He goes to a place where the light that illuminates and restores him and brings him back to the power, reminds him who he is. So I think of this place as like a fortress of belief. When you come here on a Sunday, when you watch us on a Sunday, when you go to the service at Palm Springs on a Saturday, wherever you engage with us, this can be that place of belief, that fortress of belief where you remember who you are and what's possible. The very last scene in the movie, in case it's unclear or you doubt this about remember who you are, very final moment of the movie is him being surrounded by imagery of his family. Literally lying on a bed and watching home movies of his family, reminding him of who he is and reminding him who loves him, who really loves him, and that he is that blessing and that he is blessed. Holmes reminds us, treat until you get results. So I think until all the infinite possible results that any of us could ever want, and I underline infinite because if you know, as Dr. Tiffany and I were talking about yesterday, infinite means always expanding. You never get to a place where there's like, okay, I got it, I'm done. There is no such place. There's only growth. There's constant expansion. So really, you're treating until you get constantly expanding results. So I go back to on Friday we sent out an email and the talk title was My Last Talk Ever? ? And what I want to say is that was not the right talk title. The right talk title was not My Last Talk Ever. Because what I realized in convincing myself through this experience is nobody is ever complete. We're always expanding, always growing. There's always something more for us. And so this is a place where I come to be recharged, to be with, as Dr. Liza said, to look around and see all the blessings of people in the audience, the blessings of our amazing singers, the amazing musicians that play with us, that bring this experience to life. So not my last talk ever, because I refer back to the scene from the movie. This, in my opinion, is a place, this community that says, I've got you. Namaste.